Good evening and happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the third night of our Overcome Your Imposter workshop. Tonight, we are going to dive into the meaning of our imposters and really start to identify what it is that they sound like in our brains and very much the impact of having these thoughts or letting these thoughts control us have on us. Okay. I'm going to jump right in here. We did a lot of talking, a lot of foundation work over the last 2 days. So let's get into it, right? So, the four most common imposters that I have experienced with the high achieving women that I work with are these. And I kind of wanted to just give them a label. Yesterday we talked about, giving our imposters a alternative character or a name or something that we can identify them that is separate from who we are. And this concept I've related into the four most common imposters here, right? So I'm going to start with the first one. And the first one is the imposter that likes to tell you that you're underqualified, right? That even though you got a job, even though you started a business, you're working your way up, you are being a boss, that you just aren't good enough to continue doing what you're doing. It likes to kind of pin you against this alternative person that may do the job better than you could do it. This could be someone that's real, it could be someone that's imaginary, but it starts to have you playing games in your mind that's comparing you to someone else that may be real or imaginary. This is where a lot of the times people feel like they just got lucky, like they're not actually the person that should be doing the job, but they got lucky, right? And so now that they're there, they have all these thoughts going on in their head like they're not the one. And this has a big comparison component to it in here. The next one I like to call the mean girl. And the mean girl likes to poke at you and ask you, who do you think you are? I got this mean girl response a lot from people who were going off into their own adventures. And we talked a lot about pricing when it came to like their packages or their services. Also talked with women who were looking to advance. I get a lot of the mean girl that comes up when I talk to women about negotiating their pay. Like, who do you think you are to go after whatever it is that you want? I would say that if you experience a mean girl imposter, you probably had a bully or a mean girl or some kind of interaction in your youth that really made it so like this is something that pops up for you a lot. Even though as an adult you have probably gotten over it, gotten through it, had many achievements and successes, that this imposter still lives in your brain because you lived with it as a kid. Whether you were a young kid, I've worked with women who were bullied by their parents. So a young kid learning, whether or not it was in school. I know a lot of us deal with a lot of different things when we're in school, and bullying tends to be a big one because all of us are still learning what our identities are. And we're all dealing with home life / school life / social life, those kinds of things. Excuse me. So mean girls tend to be instilled in us when we are young, and we drag them into our adulthood and let them live in our brain. And they really just like to come in and mess with you. It's a big poking, right? Poke, poke, poke. And it really turns into procrastination. You begin to second guess yourself, doubt yourself, and then you're like, well, I don't want to move forward because I'm not really sure what the right thing is. And this imposter in my head is like really making me think like, yeah, who am I to be doing this kind of thing? So it brings about a lot of worry, and it also brings about a lot of judgment. Judgment lives in the mean girl here. The next one is the know-it-all. The know-it-all imposter is the one that likes to tell you that you need to know or learn more to be sufficient at something that you've already achieved, if that makes sense, right? Let's say that you do get a promotion, right? It likes to come in and say, like, now you need to learn all of these things in order to take the next step, right? You start your own business and you're like, cool, you knew what you needed to start your own business, but now what? Do you know how to keep the doors open? Do you know how to find clients? Probably not. You're probably going to fail at any moment because you don't know all these things. Then we get stuck in this cycle of feeling like we are inadequately um, inadequately intelligent. That sounded weird. Knowing how to move forward, even though we're already doing it. We're already moving forward, right? It likes to come in and question how smart and capable you are, and it really starts to dig at like the hardworking aspect of you, because then you begin to hesitate, right? Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I do need to take this course, this class, whatever. But in actuality, it's just like you're already doing it. Just like keep going, don't hesitate. And that's this hesitation falls into like needing to know every little thing before you move forward. For those of my coaches that are in here, you probably learned this in the first week that you were coaching, right? You don't need to know every single thing about the company to still inspire people and still do great things or hold amazing groups, right? So learning as you go is something that you can do, and bosses do, by the way. So letting the know-it-all imposter hesitate you, what keeps you back. And last is the you know nothing. This is the Jon Snow that I told you guys about yesterday, right? This is the one that likes to come in. I feel like this is the closest definition to like the psychological definition of what it is, right? That like you've achieved so much and you're doing so well, but that Jon Snow likes to come in and say like you got here, but like you don't really know what you're doing, right? Like this is dumb luck. You just happen to be at the right place at the right time, and it comes in. And it's like you don't know what you're doing. You don't know anything, right? This is the one that when it starts to come in, I look at it and I go, no, you know nothing, Jon Snow. And it really empowers me. I encourage you to try it. It gears me up with the same kind of energy that a superwoman power pose does. No, you don't know anything. I know what I know. And it's enough to keep me going, right? Take a sip of water. So these are the four. Now, as you're reading through these, I'm curious to hear which ones you resonate with. I've talked to so many women, and across all of them, one of these, and sometimes multiples of these, have come up once, twice, every freaking day of their life as they are bossing their way up. So these are really common and these are normal, and they have a little bit of core confidence crushing killers inside them, the comparison, the judgment. And these are things that like I even feel like Jon Snow is a bit of like disrespect, right? Like don't disrespect me and trying to tell me that I don't know what I know when I know what I know. But then come in here and disrespect me trying to convince me that I don't know these things. Like I do know these things and I just have to remember, right? So which ones resonate with you? Which ones are you like, yes, I feel this. Yes, I have experienced these. Which ones have you experienced and can't get over? Like still have not figured out what to do. Which ones have you experienced and you've been able to kind of reel it in a little bit? I'm interested to know what those are. And as we begin to dive deep into what these imposters sound like in our head, we also now get to look at the potential impact that they have if we let them drive the van, right? So the underqualified, which is the first one I spoke of, as you start to like, I feel like the underqualified really came with people who were in like worked for other organizations. They were top level, so like CEOs, managers, leaders of teams. The underqualified comes in to make you feel like once you've reached that next level, like if you're just an employee and all of a sudden you become a manager, then it's like, oh, now I have to manage people, and now I have to manage people. I have like a whole new set of responsibilities and all these things, and it's like, yeah, that's what happens when you get promoted, right? But your imposter tries to make that a bad thing. It tries to make you feel like you are so underqualified that you all of a sudden, like, here's the thing: if you got promoted, then somebody from the outside was watching you work, watching you do good things, and thought they are capable of taking this next step and this next level. Does it mean that you know everything? No. But obviously, you knew enough to get the attention of someone who was like, here's a raise, here's a promotion, here's what you're doing now, here's the team that you're leading, right? And so, what happens when the underqualified imposter starts living in your head and you start thinking like, I don't know how to manage a team, I don't know how to do this, right? Like you may not know, but you have the skills that got you to that point, right? But when you start living with that imposter, then you start making mistakes that you wouldn't normally make. right? You're listening to this person in your head tell you like you don't know what you know, even though you do know it because you've been validated by of knowing it with this promotion. And then you start making these mistakes and it's just not a good look, right? Like someone gives you a promotion and all of a sudden you're stuck in your head and then you start making mistakes that you don't normally make. It's like, I wonder if this was a good fit or a good decision to make, right? So that's the impact that the underqualified can have. The mean girl impact really is this being stuck. And the mean girl can be one of the hardest ones to get over. Like I said, mean girls usually come from people that have been bullied or teased as children. And those types of imposters are deep seated in us because they happen in childhood. That means that we've carried it a lot longer. And as we begin to do this work, you may realize that you've been carrying the mean girl imposter without recognizing that the mean girl imposter is impacting you. Like that was a lot of words. Let me say that again. You may be carrying the mean girl imposter for a really long time without realizing that it's impacting you. And now that you're doing this work, you're like, damn, I've been carrying this mean girl for a long time. And I know like mean girls are really easy to name because you can think of your bully or you can think of someone like, I have a lot of girls like, okay, Becky over there. Like, I hear you, I see you, thank you very much, but no thank you, right? So like understanding that the mean girl really lives in this like judgment component, right? And when we begin to feel judged, what do? We hide, we cower, we get back. We don't want people to negatively judge us. So we like move into the shadows and then we're stuck. We are completely, not only are we stuck, we buried ourselves, right? And so to get back to where we were feeling empowered or feeling like we deserved what we were receiving, excuse me, it's a longer dig. We got so much more to dig through to get back out because we've now buried ourselves away from judgment. And so this impact is literally like a stall in progress. Like what are you doing down there? There's not much that you can do in that place. There's no progressing. You're so busy dealing with judgment and climbing and crawling out of this hole at whatever speed you do that. For me, I'm a slow climber out of that hole. It takes me a long time. So I prefer to just not put myself there, right? I prefer to like stop this cycle of judgment for my mean girl and stop the burying. The impact of the know-it-all is that, there's like so many. The one that I put in the journal, I think is the most important. It's the fear of failure that hinders your ability to embrace and enjoy the unknown of your success. And I feel like the know-it-all, I think I mentioned this already, really comes with women who have stepped out on their own and they're doing their own thing. They feel like now that they are their own, like when you're your own boss, you no longer have people telling you what to do or how to move forward or your tasks for the day or what's the best way to market or what events to have to get more people in the door, right? Like now it's all on you. And then you feel like, God, I don't know everything about how to do all those things. And so then you're like, I need to know it all, right? What ends up happening here when you get into this place is, well, one, I've seen it happen before where women have started their own companies and instead of enjoying this amazing and like joyous next step in their business and their achievement, they all of a sudden go into, oh fuck, I don't know everything. And then that is stripped away. They no longer get to enjoy that like stepping into their ownness, that like this is my own business and this is my own adventure and venture. And so they lose that enjoyment, right? And as soon as that enjoyment is sucked out of your experience, then you're left with what, right? I find that this, what hinders and impacts the know-it-all imposter the most is fear. It's a lot of fear of the unknown, not knowing necessarily like, when you have a boss and you have an office to go through to every day, you know what you're supposed to be doing because someone tells you to do it, right? But then there becomes, when you're on your own, there's fear of not knowing whether or not what you're doing is the right thing, or maybe just not knowing. Like, what happens if, you branch out on your own and all of a sudden you have 1,000 clients, and you're like, oh shit, I have 1,000 clients, right? Like maybe you didn't expect that kind of growth and it just like boom happened. And then you're like, I don't know how to manage all these. I don't know how to make sure I'm giving quality service. I don't know how to make sure that like if I'm mailing things out, they're getting them. Like I didn't plan for 1,000 people. I planned for 100 people, right? So there's this fear of the unknown, fear of how to move forward, fear of just like just the that you just don't know, right? And so that tends to be a big impact for people that get stuck in the know-it-all. And then last, the you know nothing. And oh man, Jon Snow, the you know nothing. So this tends to be a very bullying imposter as well because it just makes you feel like you're such a fake. You're such a phony that everything that you've accomplished so far like isn't yours. And that can be a really hard place to be, especially when you work so hard at what you're doing, right? This really becomes like a mental beat down. I remember I said that this is the imposter I believe is closest to the psychological definition of what imposter syndrome is. That you, despite the external validation of everybody, whether it is promotions or accolades, awards, having a following that will follow you from your 9 to 5 job into your own venture, right? That you still feel like you're not good enough or that you don't know what you're doing or you don't have what you need to succeed. And that can be very mentally abusive, just like a mental beat down. And if you let this imposter live with you long enough, you begin to feel horrible. And who can succeed while feeling horrible all the time? When you have this voice in your head that's like, you suck, this isn't yours, you didn't earn this, you don't know how to make this work. It's just like, So there's this when you get here, the impact here is this like very horrible mental, physical, physiological, emotional feeling that keeps you from leveling up. How do you keep going when you're in that mental state, right? So as you begin to acknowledge these imposters, what they say to you, and recognizing that their presence and whatever it is that they're saying to you translates into an impact that usually is action based, and it's the lack of action. It stops you from acting. You have this judgment, you have this fear, you have this comparison, you have this mental beat down that happens to you. And in every single one, the case is that you don't act. And if you do act, you are acting out of alignment with what your goals are, usually. Been my experience and the experience I've had with my clients, right? So the great thing about this is that as you are beginning to understand what your personal imposters are saying, and then recognizing what that translates to in terms of your non-action, right? Think about what they say and think about how it stops you. And make a note of this, write it down. Use the space in your work journal to really work through this. And understand that right now, you are letting your imposters have the keys to the van. They're driving the van, you're in the van somewhere. You can see that it's happening, but your imposters are like, I'm driving, this is it, this is the final decision, right? But our minds have the power to stop us from doing what we need to do, and know that they also have the power to take back the keys from the van, put your imposter in the front seat, you start driving, and you have the power to stop them, right? This isn't just like, your mind isn't just like, oh, like willy-nilly over there, right? Like maybe it feels that way right now, but through this work, you can take back control. We're going to talk a lot, I guess, tomorrow. It's not going to be very long, but we are going to talk about what that looks like, right? Taking back control from your imposters. Now, this is going to look different to all of us. Why? Our imposters have the same underlying effects on us, right? Like these 4 common imposters didn't come out of nowhere. I talked to a lot of people and came up with this list, right? So I'm almost positive that at least one of them has affected you in some way. But how they affect you is different from woman to woman, right? So as you begin to unpack all of this, it's going to be important for you to understand what they say and how they impact your action, so that then you can be the one that puts a stop to it and you know how to respond. That's the thing, that this is where the work, I think, usually stops for people, right? Because we try to blanket actions and thoughts over everybody's imposter syndrome. And you just can't. You really can't, because these imposters are individualized. They are the ones that hinder you. And your imposters don't hinder me the same way. So how we deal with them is different, if that makes sense. Okay. So we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. Um, if you have any questions at all, you can always email me. My email is theconfidencecolumn@gmail.com. Thank you so much for showing up for the third day of our Overcome Your Imposter workshop. Tomorrow's the last day, and I'm so excited to help you understand how to make movement past your imposter syndrome so that this is an activity that you can begin implementing on a regular basis. The more you do these exercises, the more quickly it will cycle through your brain. Your imposters won't live with you as long. You'll start moving through it much more quickly, and therefore it won't impact you or your business as much. Okay, I will see you guys all for movement tomorrow. Have a great night.